Hello and welcome again to the Naked Englishman video. I nearly said podcast because I do a podcast. Excuse me, whilst I just scratched my eye. It's the 9th of October as I record this. This supports the Naked Englishman podcast I do. It's just a video and I try to do one of these once a week. I've been out camping with the lovely Julia and a few friends. The video will be on the main Bald Explorer channel or Made in England, Richard Vose Made in England, whatever it is. That I do. But I was thinking about what I could do with this channel and where I want to take it. And I thought, well, A Naked Englishman is really about thinking about things. It's my thoughts, it's my opinions, or my cogitations, if you like, on certain things. And so this is raw. So I'm not using lights, available light in my room. I'm aware the sun is going to disappear. So I may have to adjust the aperture when I'm filming. I just, like the podcast, I just record it on a Zoom mic and I wander around the house, but this, I don't want to do that. Anyway, I want to be more concise in this and less rambling if that's physically possible. Today I was thinking, as my thought, it was something somebody said, and I want to find out more information about this. Why do we work for other people? Why do we go and work for somebody else, and why don't we work for ourselves? My dad ran his own business. He did work for somebody else for a while, and then he left that and he ran his own business making aerials, not radio aerial, not television aerials and things. That he made radio aerials for all sorts of different industries. And I suppose I grew up knowing that my dad worked for himself, so it was quite strange when other people went to work. He worked at first, as when I really got to know him, in a shed, and then he got premises and he moved around, and then my parents split up and he did have small premises, and when we used to go and see him, we'd work in his premises in Guildford and help him on the assembly line doing piecemeal work, doing stuff for these aerials. And I now work for myself, and I've worked for myself most of my life since really when I finished mime training. I went to mime school and learned all this, how to do all this mime stuff when I was about 26. And so I have worked for myself for nearly 30 years or over 30 years, whatever it is. And I have worked in supermarkets and security and things like that when I was in my 20s, trying to get the coursework that I wanted to do, that I paid my way through. But now, of course, I just think it's funny because people go to work for big corporations and they get fancy cars and they get a fancy salary, and then they work really, really hard. And what with COVID, I suppose, and people then having to work at home, it just made me think, why do people actually work for somebody else? Why, when we're at school, we're sort of funneled into this is how you do things. We're almost funneled that way in a slightly different way to stop people from thinking about things, because we're forced to have televisions, not forced, but we're enticed to have televisions which help influence how we perceive life and how we basically whittle away a lot of our time, which is a bit strange. In front of screens, and we're doing that. And I mean, I'm doing it now. And yet, of course, screens have the advantage for debate. And so there's a tiny part of the television world that is debate and thinking and philosophizing and being aware of how to improve yourself, like learning a language, things like that. But so much of it is pure entertainment. Now, you could argue, of course, that people who've been at work all day long, they want to come back and they want to switch off. And I understand that as well, because that's in many ways what I'm trying to do, is to provide a switching off service so that people can enjoy what I do. I mean, whether they enjoy it or not is another kettle of fish, but that's what I try to do. And I just don't really get the advantage for working for somebody else. For example, you work for somebody else, they make a profit out of you. So you're employed and they make a profit out of what you do. in a big corporation, so that the people who own it don't have to do the work. They get you to do the work because presumably there's too much for them to do. But the way the employment is set up is you don't get a share of the profit, you just get the wage. Now, I would normally say that I'm a capitalist. I believe in running a business for a profit. I'm definitely not a socialist where everything is shared out and the state does as much of everything as possible. I would certainly say that, but honest work, hard work, achievable work, not being whipped by somebody else. If you can do something and you do it well and you love what you do, you tend to work much harder than if you're doing something you don't like. Because then the other argument is, of course, who's going to clean the toilets? People tend not to actually relish the idea of getting a brush and swishing it down a stinky old toilet, of course. So I understand that as a counter argument. But I suppose it's the culture that we're told to get a job. Everyone must work, and then there's this business about we have to have this GDP, which I never really understand, and we've got to keep increasing our productivity for some reason. And then again, I never really understand. It's like we never question this, that we must increase our productivity to be able to compete. And yet I always think of work, the work that I do is to make ends meet, to make enough money to buy services or food that you need in order to have a nice life, in order to get some satisfaction out of the life. I'm not thinking that I need to work in order to make huge amounts of money to buy a house, which then needs a big house that needs an inordinate amount of expenses on it just to maintain it, or to heat it and power it and to clean it and all those things. I'm quite content with my small 2 up, 2 down place. And granted, I'm thinking about, the potential of Julia and I moving in together and having a place, and potentially her children living with us, and obviously they want to see and visit and maybe live with their father. That's not my call, and so I would need a bigger place, but not bigger than my means, not bigger than perhaps my ambition. But if I did have a bigger place with a garden, for example, it would be about growing my own stuff. And when you go back to, before work was something that we would label work, people farmed in order to eat, in order to survive. People didn't really think of that as work. I mean, it was hard work, but it wasn't like a job. If you didn't do it, you didn't survive. And families would be working on the family business of surviving. And so I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this. And of course you can comment. I'll leave the comments on this open. So I don't know where this is all going. I'm just going to adjust the aperture. Can I adjust this whilst I do this? I don't know if I can actually. I've never quite. Oh, has that gone up? Is that better? So the concept, would it not be better? I mean, I'm posing this question because I don't know the answer. It's not that I know the answer and I'm not being prescriptive. It's just, would it be better if people worked for themselves, were confident enough to set up their own business? Admittedly, if everyone's working for themselves or their small businesses, that you're all part of a team and that you all share the profits, and there's going to be a hierarchy and someone somewhere is going to have to make the decisions, which may be good or bad. And I understand there'd be complications in that if some people are saying, oh, no, don't go down that direction, we need to go this way. And I can see that things would fall apart very quickly and arguments would happen. And even in a family, a traditional family, there is a hierarchy, and I know people get very wound up if you say, well, it's the father that's the head of the household and everybody beneath him has a role to play because of the patriarchy. But it wouldn't have to be the father. It could equally be the mother that's who's got the boots of the family, as it were, and controls things, or that the mother and the father, as you like, are the managing directors jointly, and they have differing roles, and they would come to an agreement, hopefully, and then the sons and daughters, the offspring, would go and be part of that. And their deal is, well, in the old farming thing, is we need you to go and plant those seeds, because if you don't, none of us will eat. And so you are part of a team. It just seems somehow bizarre that people will willingly almost throw their lives away to work in an enclosed environment that they may not like, to do something for hours and hours on end that they may not like, get punished or spoken to in a way they may not like by people who seem to do less work than they do, and they put up with it. And yet we're not encouraged to go off and do our own work. I mean, there are entrepreneurial people, but we're not really encouraged that at school. Society hasn't encouraged that we have smaller businesses. In fact, it seems to be that at this moment in time, the big global corporations want to stamp out the smaller businesses and have more people acting as drones working for them. I think that's quite dangerous, because the power becomes smaller and smaller, and the power is shrunk to fewer and fewer people, and those people have more and more power, if you see what I mean. And so the rest of the society, by not being entrepreneurial, by not setting up their own businesses, by not being self-supporting, rely on this one power. So, for example, I am on YouTube, and on my main channel and my secondary channel, Unusual Tales, they're both monetized. This isn't monetized, this channel, because there's not enough people who actually view it yet. And so these make money through YouTube. I don't really have any other source of income. Now, if YouTube say, do you know what, Richard, we don't really agree with the sort of things you're talking about or how it works, they can kick me off. And while there are other channels, they're not as brilliantly set up at this stage to compete with YouTube. YouTube is, it's an incredible thing. So now, the counter argument, of course, is that if everybody set up their own little businesses, you couldn't have a YouTube, because you'd need a lot of people to work on YouTube under the directorship of, the few people who sort of are making the decisions that tear down, and everybody getting behind it in a way. So I do see that, but it leaves, if you're that drone working, like I'm a tiny little channel working on YouTube, and if YouTube's then say, sorry mate, we don't want you, for whatever reason, and I hope they don't, obviously, but it means I'm then it's like the tadpole or the fish that's out of water. You're wriggling around going, oh, my water has gone. Instead of, I suppose, having loads and loads and loads of little goldfish bowls, you can go, well, if you don't want me, I'll just plop into this one. Oh, you don't want me, I'll plop into this. Oh, you like me. Okay, that's nice. And I don't know whether that's really a good way to run the world. As much as I value the opportunity that YouTube gives me. So I'm not arguing for not having some of these corporations. It's just sometimes it feels as if, I don't know, as if we're not free thinkers anymore, and that people aren't encouraged to be more dependent, So I start off thinking, why are not people working for themselves? Because I just feel if you work for yourself, there's more enjoyment in life. That's not necessarily going to be the case for everybody, and I appreciate that. And I don't have the answers. I'm just trying to sort of work this out in my head. Anyway, I just wanted to share that And I just think that maybe the Naked Englishman is a place for me to express ideas. At the moment, barely anybody watches this channel, so it's a great place to sort of experiment with ideas and see how they go. It may be that everything I've just said is complete rubbish, would never work, and is no good. And I accept that. I'm not, people are able to tell me, and they do, you're completely wrong, Richard, it would never work. Hopefully people would say that in a polite way rather than in an aggressive, you're an idiot way, just for trying to work life out, I suppose. And that's what the Naked Englishman is all about. Anyway, thank you for watching, if you have. And I hope to do another one of these at the end of next week. Somewhere around the end of the week type thing. Or by the weekend. Anyway, I'll leave the comments open and you can say whatever, say whatever you like. Thanks for watching.